Charlie, what's up?
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Welcome to 2021. We're back with the U.S. Soccer Podcast. It feels so good, and we're starting off with a good guest.
I can't wait. It's been too long. I've been enjoying the break, but I've missed this, so let's get going.
This is crazy. This is absolutely insane. Such at a loss for words. I mean, I'll find them. Don't worry about it.
Do I like playing against adversity? Man, I just like playing, period.
I'm shocked, and I'm so proud of our guys, man. Unbelievable.
Putting the crest on every single time means something to me.
All right, here he is, coach of the under-23 men's national team, Jason Kreis.
Welcome to the show, Jason. You're the first guest in 2021. Congratulations on making your U.S. Soccer Podcast debut. How does it feel? How's the pandemic treated you and your family during this time?
It's obviously been a crazy 2020. I think we're all excited about kind of putting that behind us and putting some of these scenarios behind us. Myself, in my role as the U23 head coach, I'm just super excited to get back on the field with these guys. It's been since March since we had a camp, and we're really eager about what lies ahead in 2021. We feel like there's all kinds of opportunities for these players to make big impact for the U23 group as well as the full national team. So a lot on our plate moving forward, and we just couldn't be more excited to get it all started.
I love hearing that, and just knowing that you guys are back in camp. I think, first of all, what was that like these last few months? How were you managing keeping in touch with players and evaluating them when there weren't games and there were games, and making sure that they were getting better in that time?
Yeah, I mean, it's such a long window of time. It kind of started off with one process and moved towards another. At the beginning process, when nobody was playing games and nobody was training, it was mostly just about reaching out to the guys and just seeing how their mental health was. It was a difficult time for all of us not being able to get out or socialize. And we have a lot of young guys that are kind of living on their own for their first time. So it's important just to make sure that they were keeping themselves busy, staying active. The questions were about, could we provide you workout assistance? If your club's not providing you exactly what you need, can we reach out and help? And then it moves along to the games, and now you're looking at, how are they performing in those matches? So that kind of gets you back into a normal phase of the world and what you're doing as a national team coach. So that seemed to move forward nicely. And then the end of the year, I spent in particular the last two camps working with Greg as his assistant. So really nice for me to see in person what some of those young players look like, both in Europe as well as the domestic camp. So although it was a year of difficulties, I felt like I kept pretty busy.
And you also are making the most of the year, which is also incredible. I know you're in camp with a talented U23 squad right now. But before we get into that, let's take it back to your career as a player, because we would be doing you an injustice if we didn't do this. So yes, we do.
No.
You scored 108 goals in your MLS career, so we have to talk about that. You're one of the most prolific goal scorers in MLS history. So you're the 1999 MLS MVP. You got some of the most fond memories. I know you do. So we're going to pull them out. What do you remember about your career? What were the highlights?
Oh, I mean, it's easy to jump right to that year in 1999. I think I would be remiss if I didn't mention the 1997 U.S. Open Cup win that I was a part of there in Dallas. But obviously the most sort of individually rewarding time was 1999. It also happened to coincide with the birth of my first son, Jason. And I always have looked at that year as if, he was somewhat of my lucky charm. It was a change in my life. Obviously, anybody that has kids knows what that feels like when you have your very first, and how that can change your life and settle you down and give you a different perspective. And I feel like that all kind of came together in that year, as well as a position change. I went from being an attacking-minded midfielder to being moved up front in 1998. The latter part of 98 was the first time I'd ever played forward. And so, all again, kind of positionally, everything kind of fell into place for me to be in front of the goal, oftentimes to finish off everybody else's hard work. So really, really special year for me from an individual point of view. And my career, I enjoyed it. There's certainly things I look back on and wish I had done a little bit differently. Wish I had been able to even have the opportunity to be in an MLS Cup final or win an MLS Cup. That's certainly something that left a little bit to be desired, but good career. And I think ultimately I got a lot out of my abilities. Probably, I would say, I feel like I outperformed what I was given, but certainly willing to work hard for everything that I got.
I love that you point out that adaptation of going from a central midfield position into a front runner position, because that's probably something that you see or look for in players too. How can we utilize them in the best way and use that experience that had from your playing career into coaching as well?
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that you oftentimes when you're coaching a team or looking at a team from more of a broader perspective, you'll see guys that are really, really good players, but they happen to be in a position that's behind somebody that's even better. But you look around a little bit and try to figure out, where could you move that player to best utilize his abilities and to best put together a team full of brighter prospects.
For you, you mentioned that helped you score a lot more goals, getting in front of goal, finishing the products of everybody around you. I know that's what goal scorers say, but you did some of the work too. Is there a goal that sticks out to you that you remember the most and you can still almost feel it?
Listen, first and foremost, most goal scorers would say that they did all the hard work. Let's be fair. I mean, most strikers have big, big egos.
Well, I was trying to make Charlie feel like he would say
Charlie's
the same
case
thing,
in
so.
point. Charlie's a case in point. No, the most special goal was probably the 100th. To be honest, it's the one that sticks out in my mind the most. It was a pretty well taken goal. It was assisted by a friend of mine that I had played a long, long time with in Dante, Washington. And yeah, I mean, just the goal was special. It was celebrated special, and it was a landmark occasion.
You have 14 caps with the U.S. Women's National Team. You scored a goal against Jamaica. We ask everyone on this pod about their first cap experience. Walk us through that moment you received the word you were getting called up and when you entered the field.
Yeah, really, I mean, my national team experience is interesting, really, really interesting, and certainly not something I look back on and say, "Oh, what a huge success it was." I had wanted more, obviously wanted to do a lot more, and kind of left a hunger in my stomach all the time about that situation. But the first time I got called up was actually for a Saudi Arabia game, and it was even before, I think, before the league even started. So I didn't really know what I was doing there. I was a little bit lost to try to figure out why I was a part of this group with all these incredible players. But I soaked up that experience, and then about, I think, almost a year later, maybe 8 months later, I got called up again for an El Salvador match. And the funny part of that story, and this was my first cap, and the really funny part about that story was I was dreadfully sick the entire week. We had played the LA Galaxy the weekend before that call up. I played really ill in that game and managed to score 2 goals. It was like one of those things where you're not feeling great, so you're not even thinking about how you're performing. You're just doing it. It was a great game for me. I scored 2 really good goals, but then it got sicker as the week went along. So we got too close to the match, and Steve Sampson was the coach that time, and he asked me how I felt and how I felt about playing. And of course, being young and naive, I'm like, yeah, absolutely, I want to play. And I went out there and played 45 minutes, and I was awful. So I think I probably got subbed out at halftime. And looking back on it, I wish I'd probably had a little bit more experience to say, no, this is probably isn't the right time for my first cap. But anyway, I went for it. Good experience. And yeah, the first goal, the only goal I scored for the national team was huge for me. I think I almost broke down into tears after the goal. And that was another special occasion because it was assisted by none other than the great Brian McBride.
I want to know why do you think you were almost brought to tears? What emotions were you feeling in that moment? Because I can try to figure that out, or subject of what I would feel, but I want to know from your perspective in that moment when the ball goes in the back of the net, what's that feeling like?
It's deeper than that. And it comes from just being, I think, a young player moving up through developmental ages and wanting to be a part of regional teams. Back in our day, there was the ODP, Olympic Development Program, wanting to be a part of regional teams, never being selected for those, wanting to be a part of national team pools, never being selected for those. And then finally get into a professional stage where I was able, I think, to show a little bit more about what I was about. And now getting your first national team experience as already a professional player at 23, 24 years old. And so for me, to represent my country was always the ultimate goal. It was, for me, it meant more than trying to find a career in Europe or, the money that I was making or anything else. For me, the honor to represent my country was second to none. And I can remember it wasn't just that scoring that goal. Of course, the goal was an extremely emotional experience because it felt like, okay, I may have now finally arrived a little bit. But for me, it was every national anthem when I was in the lineup. To be a part of those national anthems on the field before those games was super emotional as well.
Well, you touched on the emotional experience as a player. Now, walk me through the emotional experience as a coach, because you made that transition from player to coach. And in 2009, you find yourself winning an MLS Cup with Real Salt Lake. What was special about that season? Can you walk us through how that developed into a championship?
Yeah. Again, I mean, the experience as a coach is quite different than being a player because, as a player, you have a lot to worry about. There's no doubt about it. You have a lot of the right things to do to prepare yourselves for matches. You have, the sleep and the rest and the training that you need to take during the week and all these sort of boxes you need to check. But those are minuscule compared to all the boxes you need to check as a coach. And not having a whole lot of realization about that when I went from playing to coaching was an interesting learning process for me. But to get to 2009 after being the head coach of Real Salt Lake for most of 2007 and 2008, to get to that moment was pretty incredible because, again, similar to any person's career and any job, there was so many ups and downs and so many inconsistencies and so many times where you win and then you lose and you win and you lose. And it's just, it's an emotional roller coaster at times. But the end of that season was similar to the end of 2008, where we really went on a run. We started to come into some real form. And as a coach, you now have these moments where you look out and you say, this is what I have envisioned. This is the soccer that I really, really love. And it's now some evidence that these guys are applying what we're trying to teach. So super, super rewarding to those moments are super rewarding and sometimes super fleeting. But the guys really, really put it all together at the end of that season and went on a fantastic run to win it.
When you started that season, did you think that you had the quality to end up where you did? Or did you feel like it was accumulation of some of the years and the work that you had put in over a few years?
No, certainly not. Never felt at the beginning of that season that we were an MLS Cup contender. No chance. I think what we wanted to do was we wanted to develop some consistency. So the year before, we had made the playoffs for the first time in 2008, and we went on a nice run then too. As I said, we lost in the conference final, barely in a game I don't think we should have lost to the Red Bull. And I think we would have given Columbus a good match for the final that year. So in 2009, we're just looking for some consistency. We're wanting that success that we had at the end of 2008 to turn into more consistency. And that didn't come. It didn't come easy. So it was certainly I felt like a very much multi-year process, a 2.5-year process to get us to the place where we felt like we could compete at the end of the season. Now at the end of the season, if you'd asked me, I'd have said, yeah, we're in with a chance here, but certainly not at the beginning of 2009.
You've coached RSL, you win an MLS Cup, you go on to coach New York City FC in their inaugural year, and you have David Villa and Andre Pirlo, Lampard, you have all these big names, and you go to Orlando City and you have Kaká. What lessons have you learned along the way that have helped you become a better coach?
I don't think we have time enough to go through all the lessons I've learned, Charlie.
The biggest ones.
We could be here for a long time. I'll give you the biggest one, I think. And the biggest one is that I've learned is that no matter the name of the player or necessarily what they've done in their career or how big they are or how many golden balls they won or World Cups they won, all of these guys are still the same. They want to be instructed, they want to improve, and they want to compete. And that was a difficult lesson for me to learn. Certainly in that first year at New York City with Villa, to kind of understand that this player may not necessarily want to be working with me about kind of helping and improving the team. He just wants to play. And so I had come from a cultural environment that we had created at Real Salt Lake that was very collaborative and very much driven on feedback from the leaders of the team. And you go into a situation like that, and you need to understand that every team and every leader is different. And so to work with a player like that, you need to understand sometimes they don't want to be worried about giving feedback. They just want to compete, and they just want to do everything they can to perform at the highest level and be elite. And so I think that's the biggest takeaway, is that sometimes, and I felt very much like that when I went there, it was almost a deference to a player like that. And as a coach, you can't do that. You need to lead, and you need to show that you know what you're doing and you're where you belong to be.
And you hear it all the time, just when you get to the professional level, how it is about coaching, but it's also about managing, like you're saying, managing the personalities and what specific players need out of specific situations. And man, that's, I don't know, would you say half the battle or more than half the battle?
Yeah, I mean, my experience again will tell me that coaching professionally is very different than coaching youth, right? I mean, in the youth levels, you need to do a lot of teaching, you need to do a lot of instructing, you need to do a lot of communicating. At the professional level, I still think there's that aspect. It doesn't just go away completely, but you've got now just this whole different thing where you need to manage. Because you have a team and because you have players that you need to figure out how to get the best out of them. It's not going to be a situation where you can come into a team and just say, okay, all you guys are all out because you don't fit my plan. You need to understand that there's a lot of these players that there's no out or in. They just are important players. They're good players, and you got to figure out how to get them on your side and manage them the correct way.
I mean, I think you couldn't have put it better. It's just we're always growing in all of the fields that we choose, and it's always an evolution and a change. And now you find yourself with the under 23 US team. What a group that you have too in front of you, a talented group of players. What drew you to this job of coaching this team?
The opportunity to coach the U23s was huge for really two big reasons. The first big reason, as I touched on before, it's an opportunity to represent my country in my field of work. To be able to coach a team and wear the U.S. badge and put my hand over my heart for national anthems 4 games is too great to, I think, ever pass up. You always have to give that extremely serious consideration, and going further than that, to be a part of an Olympics is a lifelong experience. I mean, that's a once in a lifetime opportunity. I wasn't afforded it as a player. I was 3 days too old for the age cutoff for the 1996 Olympics, and always have kind of blamed my mom for having me a little early. So it's I think about it as an opportunity that couldn't be passed up. And the second big part of that is an ability again to work with younger players and try to have an influence on their development as players, help them move along in their careers, both with their clubs and hopefully working with future full national team potentials, but also to kind of work with them as their development as people, as young men. So
yeah, such a crucial age. I wonder, we spoke about the challenges that you had as a professional coach. What have the challenges been with this age group in particular, when you're talking about how you do mentor them and coach them almost in the same breath?
yeah, again, the biggest challenge I think that we face has to do with call-ups and availabilities of the players. And so for the very first camp that I went into as the coach was in Spain, and the group that we had was like literally all of these players came to us and none of them were playing with their clubs. And so, here you're in an environment where literally these players are feeling really negative about themselves. They're at a moment where things aren't going well. They're not playing as much as they'd like to. They may be not playing at all. One situation was, the fans in his club were really down on him because he wasn't producing what they thought that he should be producing. And so really it was interesting to sit down with all these players and understand, wow, I'm working with all these guys that aren't feeling real great about themselves right now. So that's an added challenge and not in great form. And so to move from that camp to the camp since, I feel like every camp we've been able to get a few more players that are in good form and feeling good about themselves. And so it's now a little less of a mental challenge and a little more of a tactical and technical challenge. So that's been a good thing, but it continues to be really, really quite challenging to get all the players that you want. And so when you're organizing these camps, you're oftentimes starting with a list that looks like 50 players and kind of saying, okay, of these 50, how many of you guys are available? Okay, of those that are available, here's the ones we're going to select. So, and there's been a few camps where you're literally not having to make selections. You're just taking who's available.
All right. Now I need to get into the specifics of this.
Yeah.
The challenge of getting these players released for camp. So let's say I'm going to just call out a random player on your squad right now, Eric Williamson, right? He's central to what Portland do. Him and Diego Chara are really the staples in the center of the midfield for the Portland Timbers. If you go to call him up, what does that look like? How are they able to release him? And I'm sure there are a number of other players who are central to their team's success. How difficult is it for you to get these players to come into, let's say, an Olympic qualifying camp?
Yeah. So interesting. And I want to kind of tell you a little bit of side portion to what you've asked, because Eric Williamson's position has completely changed.
Okay.
So, a year ago or a year and a half ago, you asked him to come into camp, and Portland's like, absolutely. He's just playing USL minutes for us. What a great opportunity for him to develop and listen to a different voice. And now a year later, that same call up may be quite challenged because, as you said, he's an integral figure. And so I think that it's impossible to kind of give too specific an answer here, because every club has a different scenario that they're faced with. Every club, maybe it's Portland. Let's try to stay on the specific sample. Maybe it's Portland, and Portland's having a bad time. So they're in a bad way the last 6 games. They haven't won a game. They're at the bottom of the conference. That situation becomes a little more stressful for them to release a guy like Eric Williamson than if they're doing really well. They're more towards the top of the table. They feel secure about their playoff position. Maybe they're not a part of the CONCACAF Champions League, or maybe they are. So there's all these different considerations that we need to be comprehending and understanding and working with the clubs through. And our biggest challenge is try to have a heads up about everybody's scenario before we're actually sitting down trying to make these call ups, so that we can do some planning. And I think that's probably one of the hardest things, is to do some actual real longer term planning about who is or who isn't going to be available for camps.
It's interesting when you talk about that too, because then you also think from the player's perspective. If in this example, if you're Eric and your team is at the bottom of the table and you get called into camp, you're like, do I stay with my club team or do I go represent my country in a really important moment that could potentially lead me to the Olympics? That's a lot of pressure on these players as well.
Yeah, no, again, different times create different pressures on decisions. And, I think it does. I think ultimately, though, for a player, and I go back to my own experience here, for a player, just that opportunity to represent any national team just doesn't come along often enough. And so I think from that point of view, I would, and this, I never ever as a coach would put any pressure on a player to not go into a national team camp. For me, it was just like, these opportunities just don't come along often enough. At the end of the day, when you're old and retired like me, those are the moments that you look back upon fondly, and I would think if you didn't take one of those opportunities, you would be sorely mistaken about that.
Yeah, Jason, I remember, getting called up to the U-23 team. And, for me, those are some of the best years of my life. We created a great atmosphere within the group. And I look at this team and everyone is so talented. How do you go about creating the culture within this squad with limited opportunities to get these guys together?
Yeah, I think it's about delivering a pretty clear message. And this is something that I give a lot of credit to Greg Berhalter about, because he's really, really defined a clear vision for what it means to be part of a U.S. men's national team program. And so, it's been fairly easy for me to just adapt that, to take that and say, we are part of the full national team. And it's important that you guys understand that we're looking for the same things here from a cultural point of view. We're looking for the same values here. And so, those things are clearly defined, clearly dictated to the players when they come into camp, and clearly repeated over and over and over again in everything that we do. Every single day on the training session, we're getting reminders about those things. Every time we're at a meal, we're doing things together to enjoy ourselves, to socialize, and to start to form those connections that I think are really, really critical to any U.S. national team program.
And it also makes it, when you're just speaking of that, I go back to your earlier point about having a list of 50 players and maybe just getting the players that are actually available, and how when you have such a clear cut culture and defined what you need out of these players, you can look at those 50 players and they can come in and know exactly what's expected of them.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope. That's the hope, and I think that has been. You look at if we look at the difficulties with calling players in, you can look at that from a negative point of view. It's clearly easy to do that and say, man, how am I developing consistency? How are we really preparing ourselves in the best way? Or you can look at it from a positive point of view and say, look at how many players now we've been able to bring in. I mean, the number of players that have come into a U23 camp is astronomical. And so now we've been able to influence a whole lot more lives. We've been able to broaden our pool such that hopefully, they come in for qualification and it won't be any of their first time coming in. They'll have an idea, a remembrance of what we're looking for.
I think that's kind of where we got to go next, because this is an important camp because it's leading into qualification. But it's different, right? Because you were prepared to qualify for the Olympics last March and then it gets shifted. How is this camp and maybe this group of players different? And what are you, is there any difference in the preparation this year as you get ready to qualify in March?
Yeah, last year the January camp was similar to this in that we had a lot of U23 age eligible players, a lot of the guys that we were planning on leaning on for March qualification. This camp is a little different because it's a little bigger. So now we have even more, a higher number of U23 age eligible players that could potentially help us to qualify in March. The group, but what's interesting though is that this group is different in that we've got quite a few players here. I think the number is 7 or 8 players that haven't actually been a part of a U23 camp yet. And so, last year at this time, I don't think there was anybody that had been in the January camp that hadn't been already a part of our group before that. So what we are seeing is that there's a bit more teaching and coaching and understanding for these guys to go through to best prepare them for March. So we have to feel very fortunate that we have this opportunity to get them together.
Has anyone come in and just completely surprised you, or has there any players that have come in and you thought, I think for this team, for my squad, we're going to play you in a different position than what you're used to, and then they've done well in that position that we can anticipate?
Well, we're just 3 days in, so I think it would be unfair for me to make any judgments, right, Charlie? As a player, you probably wouldn't have been wanted to be judged after 3 days.
Definitely not.
So,
give me a couple weeks.
In January, nonetheless.
We'll
right?
give them all another week, and then we'll make our judgments.
Okay.
No, everybody's done a good job, and it's difficult at this stage. Having been off now, all of them have been off at least a month, and some of these guys have been off multiple months. So we're settling in here. The one thing I would say is the guys are all fit. So we don't feel like we've got guys that are unfit and possible injuries and having to monitor or adapt their training. So
All right.
I think everybody's in a good place to put their best foot forward as we move forward.
Well, you touched on fitness. Who are the standouts? as far as the beep test and fitness test?
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
See, Charlie, again, we're not playing. Back in our days, it was a beep test or a Cooper test. We don't do that anymore.
What?
So,
Well,
nope.
Sign me up for this national team.
Yeah.
None-
Where was this
none of
January
that.
camp when I existed?
No,
I know.
none of that.
Oh.
None of that fitness testing.
Just sweating thinking about the beep test.
Yeah. Gave me nightmares.
Well, for the roster in general, where do you feel like the most depth in this squad is then?
Again, it's interesting because last year I would have told you right away. It would have been a quick answer. I would have said central defender. And this year, we've lost Mark McKenzie. We don't have a guy like Justin Glad in this group who's been around this group a long time. So we're looking at lots of brand new players in that position. So I don't know that I've got an exact handle to tell you that's where we're the strongest. I mean, again, a year ago, a guy like Chris Richards, you're thinking he may be a part of things, and now guys playing for Bayern Munich. So not much of a chance that we'll see him for qualification. So don't have quite as good a feel on that. I would say probably central midfield is our area of most depth and strength, as well as right back's a pretty easy one to say as well.
Well, you've managed professionally since 2007. Where does this current group rank in terms of quality compared to years past of you coaching younger talented players?
Well, this is easy for me. I mean, it's not easy in that I haven't worked with youth teams before. I haven't worked with a specific U-23 team before. I've only been looking from afar at what our under 17s, under 20s, and under 23s look like. I have never worked there, so it's a little unfair for me to say, but I do think it's fair for me to say that this is an incredibly exciting time for U.S. national team fans and people that are involved in any way with the U.S. men's soccer program, because the level of talent that we have at these young ages and the level of experiences these guys are getting are absolutely incredible. So, and I've been saying this for a year and a half, not having seen the likes of what I saw in the November camp in Europe. I think that the potential for our players and the potential for what we may be able to put together over the next 4 or 5 years is absolutely incredible.
What do you credit that to, Jason? The emergence of such young, talented players who can step in and play big roles?
For me, this is easy. It's super easy. I credit it to the coaching. I credit it to the job that's being done on a day by day basis all across our country. I think we have given our youth development platform a lot of hard time over the past 10 to 15 years, and there's been a lot of complaining about the fact that we're not developing quality players, and a lot of complaining about all the failures we've had trying to produce professional players. And I think now's the time to say that's enough. We have people that are doing tremendous jobs in our youth development. I think it was a tremendous decision to come up with the DA as it was, and now moving forward into another academy platform where we're really, really focused on trying to develop these players, not only for their clubs, but for their country. And so I just want to take this opportunity to give credit where credit is due to all of the coaches out there that have been working tirelessly to help us develop these players, because they're doing a tremendous job.
You don't get these guys together often. We've talked about that, but in a camp like this, what has been the area you're focusing on the most when you're working with this group?
We're gonna focus on a couple things, really, really detailed. We've started off the first week all about what we're doing with the ball. We're particularly interested in what we're doing in the midfield third and in the mid third, building through the mid third, and then finishing our attacks, creating goal scoring chances. Next week, we'll flip it around a little bit and talk really what we're doing without the ball, and how we want to affect pressure to our opponent to win the ball in good areas and move forward quickly to create goal scoring chances.
Okay, let's look ahead a little bit. Olympic qualifying just around the corner. You're going to face Costa Rica, Dominican Republic, and Mexico in your group.
Mm-hmm.
Challenges that you foresee with these opponents when you just see them right here. I'm sure you've been watching a ton of film, but let's start Costa Rica. Maybe a point or two for each of these teams.
I will say, I think it should be known it's difficult. It's difficult to get video of these opponents because, what have they been doing in the last year? Pretty similar to us,
right?
Pretty similar
Great
to
point.
us. They haven't been playing. So, but no, we went into last March with a pretty good, clear view of what we expected. We expect Costa Rica to be playing in what looks like a 4-2-3-1/4-3-3, defending more out of a 4-4-2. Although they threw some interesting stuff in the last game that they played right before the preparations, defending more in a 4-3-3. Dominican Republic was a straight 4-3-3, defense and attack, and then Mexico is also playing out of a 4-3-3. It's an interesting group in that you've got two really, really strong teams, and there's only two teams, and hopefully we can count ourselves as a third, by the way. So three really strong teams, and only two get to come out of the group to basically put yourself in that game that's going to get you qualified. So it's a challenge for us. There's no doubt about it, but we do like the order of the games. We play Costa Rica first, we play Dominican Republic second, and then we get to go into that game with Mexico as the third game with, I think, a really, really clear picture of what we'll need in that game. And I think the really nice thing about being in the same group as Mexico is we guarantee ourselves to not play them in the semifinal round in that game that will hopefully qualify us for the Olympics.
Let's go. I'm pumped. Okay.
When you're looking towards those games and what you just said about not really knowing much about the opponent, as to the same, they don't know much about you. As you said, you've changed a lot. This has to be a very us-focused time. How can we perform best for ourselves and be able to adapt on the fly. Is that kind of the stuff that you're prepping this team with?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that, again, goes speaking to the culture piece that we talked about before. That falls right in line with some of our values. Being able to adapt, being ready to adapt, being ready for any situation that's thrown our way. And that's great, right? I mean, that's 2020 right there in a nutshell. All these challenges coming our way, and we're just going to figure out ways to keep stepping over them and move on to the next one.
So in your eyes, what is a successful camp?
I think a successful camp is just, for me, first and foremost, having a clearer picture of what the pool looks like and a clearer picture on what that qualification roster should look like. So, that's been conveyed to the players that this is a massive opportunity for them to hopefully, finish the camp and play against Serbia, first and foremost, but also really stake their claim as to whether or not they deserve to be and want to be a big part of the qualification going forward. So that's really the biggest objective. But the second one that goes right hand in hand with it is just that these players walk out of here with a clear understanding of our principles and how we want to play.
Love it. Charlie, are you doing all right, Charlie?
What's that?
It's getting hot. It's getting hot, Jason.
Oh, gosh.
Are you hot over there? So I'm feeling the heat.
Oh, okay.
It's time for the hot seat.
Oh, I didn't know what that was.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's rapid fire.
Honestly, nobody does.
Yeah.
So
okay.
you're not
Good.
the only one.
Yeah.
Good.
It's just Charlie and I being weird.
Yeah.
Okay.
Rapid fire. Give us the first thing that comes off the top of your head.
Oh, no.
Favorite goal you ever scored?
My 100th goal.
The hardest coaching decision you've had to make?
Whether or not to cut players at the end of my first season as a coach.
Favorite game boots of all time?
Favorite game boots of all time? Oh, man, I don't even remember them. They were the super light Nikes. They were black and red. It was the pair I was wearing to score the 100th goal.
Okay. Is it a
Do you have them still?
Is it a TM?
Vapor. Yeah, maybe the second model ever of the Vapors.
Yeah, that's my favorite.
Gosh, there are some good boots. I'm just thinking about all the ones. What do you miss most about your home state of Nebraska?
I don't miss much from it, to be honest. That's real. I hope people from Nebraska aren't watching this, but yeah, I can't think of anything.
All right, what is one thing you do as a coach that you hated as a player?
Oh man, I don't know. I'm sure I don't do anything that I hated as a player. I'm sure of it. I'm pretty sure that. Yeah, I was taking notes of all the things I didn't like from my coaches and making sure I didn't do them.
All right, we'll let you just think about that one. We'll get back. The next time you're on the pod, we'll see if you've taken any more notes. Most talented player you've ever coached?
Oh, that's such a toss-up. I'm gonna say Frank Lampard.
Okay, I didn't expect that.
Well, it's just unfair, right? Because it's kind of where they were in their career.
Yeah.
A little bit. I mean, Kaká is obviously, I think, the most overall talented, but we were working with him when he was literally a little bit on his last legs.
Right. You can take your wife Kim anywhere in the world for 7 days. Where are you going?
Maui, Hawaii.
That's a good place.
Tomorrow.
But we'd go for more. We'd go for more than 7 days. We might just stay there.
Something you know now that you wish you did as a player?
To enjoy myself a bit more.
Okay. And then the last one, and I know you're ready for this one. The best team initiation performance you've ever witnessed.
Oh, man. I haven't witnessed any that I think were even remotely good, to be honest. We're listening to a whole lot of bad singing and bad answers to questions, probably similar to the answers I'm giving you right now.
Yeah, you did okay. You did better than I thought. So
we could ask you to sing if you want us to.
We could. You
Podcast
could ask.
Initiation.
You could certainly ask. Go ahead.
No, thank you. For taking time out of your busy day with this talented U-23 squad. We're all behind you. We're rooting for you. We can't wait for qualifying. So continue to get these guys playing at their best, and best of luck.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me. It was fun.
Yeah, thanks, Jason.
All righty. Bye-bye.
Jordy, I absolutely loved hearing about the U-23 team and all the talent they have. But what were some of your favorite takeaways in that conversation? I know mine was the 99 season that he had, the special MVP year, coincided with the birth of his son, and him using that as motivation, inspiration, and was able to slow down and just enjoy the game.
That was really special. I've actually never spoken with him before, so his presence was really calming, which I thought was really cool, just to have that demeanor as a coach. And then the thing that stuck out to me when he was talking about his career is how it felt when he scored the goal for the national team, because it is accumulation of moments. And I was thinking about those moments in relation to not only his career, but also his coaching career, and how everything doesn't always go right, but you know that you're on the path of growth throughout all of it, and you keep pursuing what you want to do. And this job for him has been that pursuit of his coaching career. And so I think that was a really cool line I drew between the two things. That it was interesting hearing him just speak about both his playing career and his coaching career.
Well, it's funny you touched on that, because I hadn't had a conversation with him either until last month when I was on a panel with him. And the only Jason Kreis I knew of was this composed, like fierce competitor on the sidelines, always giving like you a stare or a grill, a good game at the end of the match. And that was kind of it. So I never had really had a conversation with him until that panel. And I thought, he's a great guy. He's interesting. The way he thinks about things and processes things. So, and he's learned a lot. So again, I think it's a great opportunity for these players to learn from Jason Kreis and obviously get into an Olympics.
And just a unique opportunity in general, Charlie, to be in camp right now and to have the full men's national team there as well. So they're training amongst each other, with each other, separate from each other. So a lot of big things ahead for both of those squads going into 2021, not only Olympic qualifying, but big games for the full men's national team as well.
I couldn't agree more with you. It's, a year where we kind of get to see what's going to happen when the vaccines are coming out. And now we're going to get back to some sort of normalcy. A lot of games, World Cup qualifying, Gold Cup, getting these players acclimated with each other and the system. I think it's going to be an exciting 2021 for the U.S. program.
Charlie, also, there's a lot happening in Florida right now, because in Orlando, the U.S. women's national team have been training, and it's their annual January camp, which is always an exciting time, everybody getting back together. Vlatko Andonovski called in 27 players to camp to kick off 2021, with all eyes on doing something that has never been done, following a World Cup with an Olympic gold medal. And honestly, if any team can do it, I'm looking at this team is very capable of that.
Oh, this team is motivated and inspired to continue the dominance on the world stage. And I fully believe that they can do it. And they have the talent and they have the mentality. We know about it. We've talked to Vlatko about how competitive these women are in training. And we'll get a look at this U.S. women's team on Monday night when they play versus Colombia at 7 p.m. Eastern at Orlando's Exploria Stadium. And that game will be broadcasted on Fox Sports 1 and TUDN. And we could see not only the return of veterans like Carly Lloyd and Megan Rapinoe, which we've been missing for some time now, but also possibly the debut of 21-year-old Catarina Macario, who was granted FIFA eligibility earlier this week to finally play for the red, white, and blue.
Yeah, Charlie, I think we will get to see that. She's had a big week. She signed with a big contract with Lyon over in France, is officially becoming a professional soccer player. And now she could make her debut as a member of the U.S. women's national team. And I know when we talked to Vlatko back in October, he said there's some players that are standing out to me. He wouldn't tell us who. I'm guessing it was Katarina. So a lot of exciting things for this team, and big year for all three of those teams that we just mentioned.
All I have to say to Katarina is bon voyage. She's going to love France. It's a great country. Obviously, the quality of soccer there is extremely high. And it's massive that the U.S. were able to get her to make the switch and be eligible for the U.S. women's national team. Again, another talented youngster, even though she's 21 years old, in the pipeline to kind of embark on her greatness with the U.S.
We got to stop saying youngsters. It makes us feel old. So, but they are. They really are. Charlie, it's been so nice to be back. We're officially kicking things back off, getting in the swing of things for 2021 with the U.S. Soccer Podcast. And we can't wait for more awesome interviews and getting to really tap into some of these great players and people that work within U.S. Soccer.
Couldn't have said it better. We're back. Thanks for listening and tuning in. Don't forget to download, rate, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And we'll talk to you next week.